Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I just sent you all a quick email, and I'm glad you're able to join us. If everyone who's not being interviewed, which would be everyone but Jon, Mike, and myself, could just go ahead and turn off their cameras and mute their mics. And then when we're about three-quarters of the way through, Mike's going to open it up for some question and answer session. And then you guys can ask Jon anything that comes up for you. And then I also want to really thank Jon for doing this for us today. He's out there in the epicenter of everything that's going on with this crisis, and you'll learn more about his experience with that, I'm sure, with Broadway. And he's set up in his house there. He's got everything all set up. And I just a brief intro of how I met Jon was through our director for Zuccotti Park in New York, Luis Salgado, who was in the show In the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda's show, and Jon was the drummer for In the Heights. And so saw them through Facebook, yeah. And I threw it out there, hey, would you do an interview for us? He's got a wealth of experience and an extensive, interesting, complex resume. So he said, absolutely. So here he is. And from here on, I'm going to let Mike take it, and then we'll ask you some questions at the end. Thanks again, Jon, and thanks, Mike, for doing this. Everyone, go ahead and turn off their cameras and mute their mics.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. And hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the West Coast Songwriters Video Vault. Please take a moment to follow and subscribe to West Coast Songwriters on social media. My name is Mike Annuzzi. I am on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Mike Annuzzi and hashtag Mike at the Mic. We are very excited for our special guest who's joining us today in the West Coast Songwriters Video Vault. He is a drummer and percussionist, performed with Gloria Gaynor, Aretha Franklin, the Ocean City Pops Orchestra, the Washington Ballet, also 23 Broadway shows, including My Fair Lady, Jersey Boys, Les Mis, Cats, and so many more. He is a kids outreach artist since 2001 for urban stages throughout New York City. He offers remote drum tracking, private lessons, master classes, workshops, and today on the West Coast Songwriters Video Vault. Please welcome Jon Berger. Jon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mike, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're very excited to have you today. I had the chance to speak with you briefly on the phone the other day, and I know how beneficial this conversation will be for West Coast songwriters. So let's go back to the start. How did you go from your studies in music to standing out from all of the other terrific New York City-based musicians to performing with some of the world's greatest touring and shows on Broadway?
Well, you know, it's I just worked really hard. I mean, it's a combination of passion and very, very hard work and tenacity. As many of you know, it's a very, very challenging business in general, the entertainment business. There's so many ups and downs, and nobody is impervious to that. I call what I do a gumbo life. I was very fortunate in that my parents loved the arts, really exposed us to a lot. I grew up right outside Manhattan, and my grandparents were in Queens, New York. We used to go in all the time. So, I lived in an area called Rockland County, actually Pomona, New York. I know there's a Pomona, California. There's a town actually called Pomona, New York, where I grew up. And it was so close to the city. It was just a hotbed of culture and, you know, in every aspect of the arts. And then my parents took us in to see so much at Lincoln Center and ballet and rock concerts and Broadway shows. And, you know, I studied classical music. I studied classical percussion in order to kind of widen my scope and my ability to work. And plus, as I said, I was exposed to so many different things. So I think I was, you know, fortunate in a big city like New York. You were able to see the best of the best. I went to college very close to the city, and I studied timpani at the Metropolitan Opera. And, you know, I got to study with some of the greatest drummers in the business. So, a lot of that too is, mentoring, being raised by the best teachers. That's very important too. To kind of help you on the path and answer your questions. And, so much of that is helpful. And, in circumstance too, I think really helps, right place at the right time is some of that. But, there's no real easy answer. I mean, my path, as I said before, as I look back now, I've been at this. I started when I was 2 years old before I could speak, actually. Just started playing drums. I don't really know why I was drawn to it, but, when I look back, I think those are really the key factors is, you really have to have passion for it and, and a tough skin, thick skin, and you just have to just keep on working. I look a lot younger than I am, but, I still love what I do. I have this recording studio I have here is relatively new. The practice room has been here, but, in the midst of all this horrible stuff that's going on, and it's terrible. I have friends affected by it, and it's really tragic. Where I live in New Jersey, right outside Manhattan, is actually the epicenter. I looked at the numbers yesterday. We're now number 2 in the cases. It's terrible, but despite all that, I still feel passionate and to come down and create. And I think that's one of the most important things is, I get to do it. I love what I do, but it's still tough. I lost all my work on March 12th.
Yeah.
All my work, everything stopped, like many people. And I've never stopped working. I'm working constantly, and I'm very fortunate now. I'm putting the pieces back together like everyone else, but it's like it's crazy. But I think the point I'm making is that after all these years, when I was, it's interesting. I got to work with Petula Clark. I went on tour with her, legendary singer. Everyone knows her song "Downtown." Just a wonderful performer. And she had a meet and greet. And the first day, I was, she wanted to gently slap me in the face because I said, "Petula, when I was 4 years old, your song "Downtown" was like just blew my mind. And here I am now, working with you, And the point is that, the same passion I had when I was 3 years old, when I hear this stuff for the first time, like, what is that? What is that? I feel the same way now, like umpteen years later, I still, being on the stage playing with Petula, or, in December, I got to play I Will Survive with Gloria Gaynor. I was talking about chills. Done that a million times at wedding gigs over and it's like, yeah, I Will Survive, Pea Soup, little disco group. 72 years old, when she started singing that, I mean, I was shaking. It was just like the roar of a lion, So I think part of what helps you keep going in this business is up and downs. The business is the bottom line is have passion for what you do, and I somehow or another I have friends that are very burnt out. They're like robotrons, and they do it and they work all the time, but they're just like zombies. There's no spirit left, and so I think push comes where we're at now. That's the thing. Get more into this later, I guess. But in the midst of COVID, what's going on? I still have so much appreciation for my life and this passion for the arts, and it's like I love teaching too. I want to just share that feeling. Hopefully, it carries on to my students, somehow convey that to them, however they want to use it. And it's the power of the arts right now, and so just somehow I still love what I do. So that's keeps me going.
That's terrific. And at West Coast Songwriters, we're just so lucky that we have you here sharing this, mentoring and showcasing your talent with everybody listening in. It's really incredible to keep that positivity and that progress going for music. This is what we're doing right now. And actually, Jon, it's really cool seeing your studio right now. It looks like you have an incredible setup. So that's a very good positive of right now.
Yeah. It was a real leap of faith. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I was actually going to share this later on with some people, but I was actually writing it down. Is that I've been pushing hard to do this home drum recording thing, remote recording, which is actually, it's not just something to do with the times we're in now. This is something that's been going on for a long time. I don't know if you guys know this, but the nature of the industry. So many major studios have shut down, as the industry changed, and there used to be a time where full-time studio musicians worked full-time. I mean, made tons and tons of money just recording nonstop, day and night. It's not really a thing anymore, sadly. But what's happened is, because as technology advanced, a lot of these top session musicians are recording out of their house. My friend Raul Agraz, he was the lead trumpet player in the Heights, now at Book of Mormon, one of the best lead trumpet players in New York. He records trumpet out of his house. The four different trumpet players I've been talking to, they record trumpet at home. A lot of drummers, some of the top session drummers, have, they in their apartments in Manhattan. Anyway, I've wanted to do this for a long time. It was, a big investment in money and time. I had to learn this Logic Pro program. It's very complicated, but I'm so happy I took the time to do that and kind of killed myself, figuratively speaking, to figure it out. But I'm already recording tracks to someone in Japan, a guitarist in Japan, and in New Jersey, and now my old rock band is writing songs together. I just laid down a rough track for one of the new songs, and it's just so nice to come down and be able to create. Start to do some songwriting too. Get the MIDI stuff going, and just it's really nice to have that in your house, to be able to just realize ideas or just try things out, and see what happens, rather than the old thing of singing into a tape recorder and some idea, la da 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 da, kind of way of doing things, which works too. But this is, it's kind of cool, and yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity that you've taken to be able to learn something new and keep yourself motivated in that direction. I mean, I know that, and you just mentioned it, but the other day we did talk about how you've been able to collaborate with so many artists from around the world at this moment in time. So I'm hoping you could kind of discuss maybe some of your ways that you've been able to work on songwriting or collaboration during this time.
Yeah, well, it was something that happened. This was also, very interesting. I was in a band called Proper Id in college. Was it before college? Well, kind of started before college. Anyway, this band we were on our way up. We were together about 10 years. And we came back together. And make a long story short, through Facebook, like happens a lot, we reunited. And we've been talking. The singer is in Scotland. Our guitarist has been in Tokyo for 25 years. Bass player is in Arizona. And the other guitar player is in Portland. So
Sounds like a local New York City based band, huh?
We were, but everyone kind of left. I kind of pissed the band off because I got a tour with a major Broadway show, and I just finished music school. I had loans to pay, and it was a good gig, and it's like, so they weren't very happy. I kind of broke up the marriage. I mean, that's how it felt. Like Dad's leaving, he's leaving us. That's what happens. So, but nonetheless, we're all older and established, and we were in touch and started talking a little bit, and before we knew it, our guitarist dusted off his guitar. It's like, wow, I didn't think it was going to happen. He's been very involved in science fiction, worked in the Godzilla sets. He's writing for science fiction magazines out there, a whole other career. And our bass player is actually, I don't know if you know the show Meteorite Man, but that's Jeff Notkin. That's his baby. He's all about the meteorites and his TV show and working with kids. But everyone's dusting off their instruments, and all of a sudden, the other day, the guitarist sent me an MP3, and I really loved it. Got me really excited, and I didn't know. Sometimes you reunite with, it's kind of like, I don't know, seeing an old girlfriend or boyfriend. You just don't know. It's gonna be awkward or whatever, and sometimes it's really beautiful thing. After all the years, and it kind of felt like that. I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, if I was gonna even care. And make a long story short, he sent me this track, and I loved it. Got me so excited. Immediately, the ideas are going in my head of like, let me try this, let me try that, like the old days when we would just bring songs into the room and just everyone would start finding parts and talking about it. So I got really busy. I had a lot of stuff going on, and I said, I want to, and plus I was just burnt out, you know, from stuff I had to deal with. So I just said, I just turned on, I just turned on the track, and I just laid down a track. I just went for it, like diving off a cliff without a net, which is the kind of way I like to play. I like to play sometimes, not thinking too much. And I sent it to him, and he was like, "Wow, that's great. You know, can you now send me just the drums? And I want to like start laying on some more parts." And then he's going to send it to our guitarist in Japan. And you know, and then he's in the meantime he got excited, so he sent me another. He's like, "This little thing I'm working on now." It's like, wow, I love that. That's so, you know, I mean, we're talking now, and I'm like a little kid. I'm like, I want to work on those tracks a little bit more. You know, it's great, and I just want to, you know, this might sound kind of odd, but I don't have any regrets about my busy life on Broadway, but right now is the most creative I felt in a long time, because all this stuff that I'm recording for people, it's just they're asking me to play drum. How I put it, they want me to come up with a drum part for their songs. So I am a creative person, and I always input some aspect. Even if I'm playing a Broadway show, it's fixed music, and composer has certain ideas, the arrangers have certain ideas, and you know. But you're doing the same once everything's locked in and established. It's very sort of paired in. There's very little room for flexibility. You know, very little nuance here and there. But you pretty much expect to do the same thing over and over again the same way. You know, and do it well. So the point is that now, I think maybe the reason, as we talk about this, the reason I feel so passionate right now and kind of reinvigorated is because I'm doing nothing but creating, and I'm realizing that. I mean, I remind myself of this all the time, because I'm usually I get a piece of music and I have to study it and perfect it, and you know, Broadway, other stuff, and you know, just be really diligent and make it feel and sound great. But it's like I'm trying to perfect everything, and now all I'm doing is creating. Yeah. And you know, and I think for anyone on any level, whether you're an amateur or, you know, top level professional, I think it's really important as far as the arts go. This is the main topic here. I think it's important to exercise your creativity, whatever that means, to paint pictures or write some poetry or dance, or you know, or just come up with music with a bass player and a guitarist, just like bang something out, and just, you know, no matter.
I think a lot of us at West Coast Songwriters are experiencing that creative process in the moment. I think the cool thing, and it kind of touches on what you were saying, we have a community here that's kind of forcing us to continue to be creative. And that's something that we offer. We have events all around the West Coast that people can come out and showcase their brand new creative things. And we're doing a lot of Zoom and video conferencing at the moment, which is very fun to be able to force each other. And Jon, you're also guiding this force to bringing us together today to talk about this creativity. So I think that's a really, really cool thing. And we're so grateful that you're doing that. I do want to touch on your Broadway shows. And I mean, that's a very unique way of expressing your creativity. I need to know, how do you prepare for a show on that level?
Well, you have to just learn. You have to learn the music. You have to be open and flexible. You know, the difference between playing drums in a band in a club, or you know, backing up an artist and playing their music, and they say, play it this way, play that way, play it like the record, or you just, you know, or you just write songs together. The difference between that and playing a Broadway show is that it's the story on stage is what is key. And they have the best musicians and the best arrangers, you know, with all kinds of experience. However, the story on stage, the story, the singing and dancing to portray that story that's key. So no matter what your experience is, you know, you have to support that, and you've got to follow all the directions. So that's like the biggest difference. So in preparation, you know, you have to be willing to be flexible. You know, like you might play a certain, like maybe it's a funky tune and it reminds you of a certain type of funk, and it even sounds like a lot like that. Still, you have to be careful about injecting too much of your personality into it. Like, oh man, this is like a P-Funk tune. You can't dive in like you're playing with P-Funk. You may have to play it, but like really softly, or maybe it feels great, and then their dancers are like, we can't dance to that, and it's slow it way down, and then you're like, this, So most musicians be like, man, this isn't funky at all, but you've got to like lose all of that, and so that's a big part of it, and also there's different aspects. Sometimes you walk in and everything is completely arranged and together, and you might morph a few things here and there and make some suggestions, or without them asking, you might change things up from experience. But also there's the whole workshop period. A lot of shows, most people don't realize this, is, as I just mentioned, with shows just all put together, most shows are not done that way. They start with a table read, and then they have they're in the studio with just a pianist, and then maybe they'll bring a drummer in. And in that stage, the workshop stage, and some shows they'll go through years and years of workshop. In the Heights we mentioned, it took like 9 years to develop. Same thing with Hairspray, massive hit. Took like 8 or 9 years before it got to the final stage on Broadway. They start very small and keep growing and developing them to take them out of town, and they try it out in front of an audience, and they change things. So in the early stages in a workshop, you've got like piano music. Piano vocal is what it's called. It's like any kind of, like a songbook. That's what it looks like. So you're reading off of that, and you have to like listen and look at that, and they're busy teaching the music to the singers. So they're like, you're on your own. So a lot of times you kind of write, in that case, which I really love doing workshops, because that's when you get to be really creative, because you end up writing the drum book. You write the whole thing, and the arrangers eventually will write down what you've done, and they'll kind of like tweak it along with the dancers and choreographers, and they'll add some things, some like little like accents and stuff that go with the dance, and you'll start to morph. But on the workshop stage that's where it's really a creative, more about what we're talking about, and they're relying on, they hire you because you're able to quickly come up with ideas. You can follow like the piano part and figure out what's going on, and then on your own, write your own part. So, it's kind of a multi-stage process, to get to that point. And also, a majority of my career, I've been a substitute musician for, actually, I wanted to mention to Poppy, I was not the drummer in the Heights, I was the substitute drummer for Andres Ferraro. He's the drummer, absolute virtuoso. He was the drummer at Hamilton now. He moved on with them, and so I subbed for him, and I do a lot of subbing, which is even more challenging because I'm expected, when you sub a show, you're expected to, it's like a perfect imitation of that person. So it takes unbelievable amount of work and time. So you come in and you sound exactly like the regular player. So that's a whole nother thing. So they're definitely not creative whatsoever, and that's when you're subbing, you have to, whatever they do, you have to do it that way, because so you have to become that person in a sense. Yeah. So
it's very interesting, like all this stuff you're talking about, it's very interesting from a songwriter's perspective. And I had an interview with a local Bay Area radio DJ the other day, where he was asking me my songwriting process. And he had mentioned that a lot of the musicians that he works with, which are, #1 hit artists out of Nashville, he was saying that a lot of them write the song not knowing if they're the ones that are going to be living with the song and singing it themselves, but they're actually writing it as a part. And it's interesting that you're saying you're kind of having to play the part as the part, and you're kind of stepping outside of yourself to make sure that song is executed in the correct way that the song needs to live. At West Coast Songwriters, we have a focus on songwriting. With all that being said, do you have any specific tips for either songwriters or performing musicians or musicians that are, professional recording artists or anything, just in ways of establishing themselves or establishing the song in the right way.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Establishing this.
Playing the part right.
Well, I think there's no right and wrong way. I just think flexibility is really key. A lot it happens to all of us that you spend hours and hours and hours, kind of figure out how to make something work. Maybe on your own, you come up with these parts and these notions of what it's going to be, and you might even like do a demo and you've got all the parts laid out and it's like, wow, this is it. And then you get into the room and your drummer starts to do something else and the bass player is like, what about this? And it's kind of like you get very married to it, and it's so I think it's important to be flexible. And I think it depends. Sometimes I've heard stories. I remember reading about the Police, how Stuart Copeland, their drummer, said how bugged them because Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers would have great songs, but Sting just wrote such great music. But they said also he would come in with a demo with all the parts, and they were like, "It's great." It's like nothing else we could do to this. In some situations it's a lot more collaborative, and I think part of being open with other musicians, even if it's one other player, I think if you're open to it, even though you have one notion, someone may bring in a new idea. Maybe you're not a bass player and you had an idea of how it should be, and the bass player does some things you never even thought about, and it's like turns your head around like, wow, that's really cool, let's try that. So I think it's a good idea to try to just take a breath and be open and try things. Be willing to try things. Even though it sounds perfect this way, if someone says, what about this? It's like, why not try it? And I think a good way to think about it is when you listen to arrangements, I mean, we've all heard a classic song, but then you've heard many different arrangements of it that are very interesting, It's like, wow, I'd never think of doing it that way. So if you think of it in those terms, there are so many different ways that you can interpret a song. And so I think if you're just open, and you just learn from experience too. Everybody's different, Some people are very stubborn. Some people are very open. Some people don't even know. Some of the best producers in the world, they'll say, yeah, man, can you give me a little more green? It sounds like kind of brown to me. Or they'll just say, yeah, I don't like that. Well, what do you want? Matter of fact, yesterday I had a drum student, really wonderful player, young player, great drummer, and he's frustrated because he's in a band, and he said that they're working on this song, and he said that the guitar player is asking him to play this sort of tom-tom groove, kind of an indie thing, and he's not being specific. I mean, he's trying all these things for him. He's like, that's not it, but he's not able to articulate what he wants. So I suggested to him, I said, well, can he give you a reference of a type of, like maybe another song that he's talking that referenced that? Can he maybe sing you the part? So he mentioned a song and he played it for me. We shared the screen. He played me on Spotify, and I heard immediately. It's just I recognized the style. It was kind of like a '90s sort of drum machine sort of style, and I made some suggestions. Said maybe try this. But I think you have to. If you're open, I think you can kind of learn how people communicate, because I guess the point I'm making is even the best of the best sometimes don't know how to articulate what they want. They'll say, try something different, or I don't like that, and so I think if you're open, if someone says I don't like that, maybe it's good to be open and not be offended by that. Don't take it personally. Say, well, okay, that's all right. That's cool. Let's try something different. I'm sorry I don't like that. What about this? What about that? Or give me some idea what you want. So
I think that one of our amazing contributors to West Coast Songwriters, he's in music licensing. He's a music producer. His name is Marcus Barone, and we're going to do a workshop with him. We do a lot of workshops with him. I had the experience working with him. It sounds just like this. I realized I didn't know exactly what he wanted all the time, but I did know what he didn't want. And that was a drive to understand how to do better at understanding what somebody else wants. And that's really, really a great opportunity for a musician to grow and be outside of their comfort zone. I personally, I think that a lot of musicians that get to groove with you or collaborate with you are very benefited by that, because it seems like you bring a lot to the table in that. I know you do a lot of songwriting or recording sessions remotely. You have your studio set up, tracking at home and doing something with people all around the world. So if West Coast Songwriters members are looking for a drummer or a percussionist to be able to, you know, finalize or help collaborate and get the song complete, is that something that you do?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's basically you're looking for a drum part or drums and percussion, you know, on your track. So, and you know, when you send, if you do this, if you send a track to somebody, you're asking them to come up with something, and so it's still a collaborative process, you know. Usually you basically do a demo and see, is this what you're looking for, and then they'll make suggestions. And there's, you know, I discovered too is all this new technology out there. One of my best friends who's been kind of mentoring me and coaching me on this whole process. He found out himself about this new technology that allows you in real time. Basically, you record a track, and then you immediately can link up with the other person, and they, right after you record it, they can hear what you just recorded immediately, like seconds after. So it's almost like you're in the studio together. And then you can talk to each other, and they can say, "Wow, that was cool. Can you try this? Yeah, maybe try another one like that." So it kind of blew both of our minds, because it's as if like you're in the studio, someone's behind the glass. It's the same kind of thing. It's called Audio Movers, I think, but I have to look it up again. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's Audio Movers. But anyway, it's just on that level, you know, it's really nice. And you know, my friend will work on a track, and he'll use Zoom, and he'll look at, you know, he'll share my page, and he can see what I'm doing on the mixing board. You know, we'll talk on FaceTime, and you know, work on tracks that way. So, you know, you can still collaborate on that level. And you know, the guitarist in Japan, I sent him the track, and it weighed 13 hours. He got a feedback, which is a little like frustrating. I hope he likes it. And he did. You know, he's like, you know, and then he FaceTimed me, and he's you know, he really, it was nice to. It was really, really exhilarating to hear that. And now he's laying down bass tracks with a bass player over there, and he sent me a thing with some guitar solos on it. So that was really cool too, because now he sent back, and I'm hearing it was just guitar and drums. Now he's added a whole other thing, and you know, it's really fun to watch it develop. So you know, it's yeah, I'm definitely open to collaborating, and you know, if people want to get in touch and, you know, take it from there.
Excellent. Where would somebody be able to search for you online? What's the best website link that they could follow you at?
My website, it's easy. It's just Jon Berger, www.jonbergerdrums, no H, JONBERGER, drums.com. Yeah.
And I have been on your website, and I love it. I love seeing all of the videos and audio links, and all of the list of artists and shows that you've been a part of. It's absolutely incredible. We're so grateful that you were here to share some of this knowledge with us and some of your expertise. I do have one more question before we move on to the next part. I know you've been working on a lot of projects at this point, even through everything that's going on. You've stayed creative the entire time, tracking drums from your studio. You're working on some new shows in New York City. Can you let us know kind of some projects that you're working on at this point?
Yeah, it's a wonderful new show called Romeo and Bernadette, and we did a limited run at a beautiful space on 10th Avenue, Manhattan, called ART, and we got really fresh new show. A music team I've worked with before, Romeo and Bernadette, a wonderful cast, and suddenly it blew up. We got all these great reviews, so the producer just got busy and found us another theater twice the size. It was a limited run, and we met with the producer. We won a union contract, the band. We were really excited about it, and moving on to Theater Row on 42nd Street. And 4 days before we were to load in, they shut down theater. Everything shut down. So it's like tick, crickets. So however, very upsetting. And the producer, he officially announced it, and he said, "I don't know how, no way we can continue." But just about a week ago, we were nominated for we were nominated for the Outer Critics Theater Award, nominated for Best Lyrics and Best Book, and then the Off-Broadway Theater Alliance nominated us for Best Musical. So it seems that, whenever the dust clears and things go back to normal, it seems like we will, regroup and go back. It's all Romeo and Bernadette. Right now, no one really knows. They're talking about possibly the fall when things will go back to normal. That's not, don't quote me on that. We don't know, but look for Romeo and Bernadette. It's a really wonderful comedy, really lighthearted, kind of goofy show with wonderful music. An interesting story, putting Shakespeare, Shakespearean theatrical stuff in modern times, and Little Italy and mafioso people, and it's a really fun, goofy show called Romeo and Bernadette. So you can look for that in a few months, hopefully. And and then doing my outreach thing with Urban Stages. I've been doing that since 2001. I have some stuff coming up this month. I do a sound effects workshop with kids, basically showing them. It's really fun, creative class. Just showing them how sound effects are used, percussive sound effects are used in theater and film and TV. So the library's requested it again, which I'm really happy about. So I'm going to start doing one of those into May, and also teaching remotely. I've been doing that as well. So
Wow.
just trying to stay active and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. That is so terrific. I want to wish you congratulations with the success. I know that just speaking with you in the last couple days and understanding you a little bit better through this interview, I know that you and all the musicians around you and artists and creative types that are working on these projects, all of that success is well deserved. I'm so thrilled to hear all about this. I'm so excited to see what is to come. For you, Jon, thank you so much for coming in today. At this point, I just wanted to thank Poppy for connecting us and making this happen today, bringing you to West Coast Songwriters Video Vault. So Poppy, if you can come on back in and join us again.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you so much, Jon, for doing this today. I don't want to take up too much time because I would like to open it up if anyone has questions. I do, of course, look forward to hopefully doing a workshop collaboration of some sort with you at some point, and your beautiful daughter who's super talented, you mentioned she could be a part of. That would be really, really fun. I just want one of your funniest Broadway stories with somebody maybe we might know, an actor, an actress, or a musician, just a funny story or experience you have of working in that world. Do you have something that stands out?
Let me think. Can't funny stories. I have so many stories, and you put me on the spot now. Gee, I tell you, I mean, to me, it's really kind of funny. It might sound like a little bit odd and rude, but I did a wonderful tour of Cinderella. Beautiful, beautiful show, and a classic show with Eartha Kitt, iconic, actress, and she played the fairy godmother, and really unique. Anyway, every sound check in every city, she would we'd start the sound check, and then she'd look down and down at the drums and me and say, "What are you doing there?" with that classic, voice of hers. So we were in Jacksonville, Florida, and my daughter was about 2 years old, and I think she was probably in a princess outfit, most likely. We're walking down the street, and I said, "Oh, there's Eartha Kitt. How exciting!" My wife's an actress, and very excited to meet Eartha Kitt, and she's walking towards me, and it's like, "Eartha, how are you?" And she looks at me like, "Who are you? Why are you talking to me?" Every single day, she looked at every sound check. And my wife was like, my daughter didn't know. She was like 2, but my wife's like, "That was kind of odd." I'm like, yes, it was. So, I have to sort of laugh about it. It's like, okay, well, I guess she doesn't know me, but I don't know. It's the only thing popped into my head, but it was, yeah. Anyway.
But it was Eartha Kitt, so,
It was. Yeah, gotta forgive her.
Gotta forgive her. Yeah.
Watching her up there on stage every day. She's just the legend character, like a I don't know, cartoon character in a certain way, and just amazing, So
That's a cool experience, though, to just have that level of connecting with people who are legendary like that. I always think those stories are exciting, no matter whether they are construed as positive or negative. It's still a story where you go, well, this one time, my friend Vitrino, was working with U2 at A&M Studios, and she's had this one moment with Bono with his arm around her, like recording something, or, looking at the video that they were putting together. And she's like, and that lives in infamy, right? That's a moment. So it's pretty cool to hear those stories. Very fun. So on that note, I'm just going to go down the list here and see if anybody has any questions. You guys can all go ahead and turn your cameras on. And then Margot, if you have any questions, go ahead and turn your mic on. You can ask Jon.
Questions. Wow. I just have to say that I really have enjoyed this interview a lot, and I'm really glad that I found out about it. So I'm glad that I'm on it, and I noticed you're recording it so people will be able to listen again. But it was so wonderful, Jon, to hear about how excited you sound about all the creativity that you're getting to do because of working with the different people. Mm-hmm. And I jotted down that you said you have to be flexible. And I thought that was really, really important, because it's true in everything in life. We need to be flexible. And I think people forget that. And in order to be creative, you need to be flexible. Yes. So I just want to say thank you for the reminders. I don't really have any actually questions right this second, but that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for coming, Margot. And then Bob Crane, do you have any questions for Jon?
Yeah. Hey, Jon, thanks for joining us today. I have a question for you. You've been doing music for all your life. What's the thing that you do now that is the most joyful for you in music?
What I was talking about before with Mike is just being creative, completely creative. And, it took me a few days just to realize that, why I felt so good and relaxed. It's because I'm not under the gun to learn this music perfectly and make this deadline. I'm just like, hey man, here's my song, with just guitar on it, play some drums, just being purely creative and expressing myself. We're very self-critical very often as artists, but then you listen back and I'm like, hearing it puts together with something I've never played on before, and it's exhilarating. And then, like I said before, I waited 13 hours, and then to see this young guitarist say, oh, bow to me and say, wow, thank you so much. I was in tears. It's like, yeah, I just played drums on this thing, big deal, but it really, to me, that's everything. And I'm kicking myself a little bit. I wish I was spent much more of my time doing what I'm doing now in the past. I don't have regrets for my career. I'm very fortunate. I live in a house. I eat because I play drums, but this creative thing is really where it's at, and it's so important, for me and for everybody. So, yeah.
It's almost like COVID. There's a little gift in the conflict that we're all discovering new ways to share and be and do in this environment. Although it's horrible in many cases, it's forcing us to be thinking outside our own box.
Indeed, yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. And Pete Summer, who's the vice president actually of our board, do you have any questions for Jon?
Oh, Jon, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. Am I on? Yeah. And I think what I would ask is so basically with with the creativity that you're involved in now and what you have been involved in from a work perspective, it's kind of a question of balance,
Yes.
you know? And I think I know I'm feeling that. I expressed it to numerous people that, gosh, I feel like I've lost myself in just being involved in the work aspect of it and not in the creative aspect of it. That's I think that's a good takeaway. And thank you so much for doing this. And I'm looking forward to seeing Romeo and Bernadette. It intrigues me with the mafia connections, because 100 years ago, when my family came over from Naples, they were theater impresarios in New York. They called them impresarios, I guess, in the turn of the century, the 1900s, and they opened up a theater somewhere in New York. I have no clue as to where it is, but it was all the Italian theater. My grandfather was from Palermo, my grandmother from Naples, and it was her family that did it. So where that is, I have no clue. But anyway, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it, and I think all the members can appreciate this too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Pete. And then Dan McDonald, one of our members. Go ahead and unmute your mic, Dan.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. I'm so impressed to hear about. I loved musical theater more than anything when I was in high school and college. But I'm an educator, and we're trying to understand what we are going to do as far as a paradigm shift in our educational system, moving to that virtual realm. We know that we're going to need it for the little guys, the kindergartners, because socialization is a huge part. But what do you see as far as the performing, the venues? Are you hearing among your colleagues what shifting in patterns you're thinking of? And also, I'm fascinated, what are you working on as far as the effects and the processing, and you know what I mean? Are you getting into the VST instruments and all that, or what's that experience like for you, and what you're working on? Thanks.
Now it's really more with the discussions going on. I'm of course not involved, but I'm listening and watching. I mean, the different entities or the different unions are meeting together. My daughter is a professional actress out in LA, and they're talking on that end, and it's very similar. A lot of it's just protocol, like how it's going to work, how are we going to sanitize this, how are we going to limit the crews and microphones, and we're going to deal with that. It's more on that issue. There's been no talk about like having remote performances or anything like that. I mean, there's no discussion about that. They're just trying to figure out how it's going to work. We can get on the protocol on stage, but also the most important thing, the theater, religious organizations, sports. Like, what about the biggest thing is people? How do you get people back in the audiences? So that's really been the discussion there that I've been hearing peripherally, and So, I mean, I'm teaching remotely, and it's very interesting. Just with, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but that's been interesting and challenging. And the technology is getting better. As everyone knows, Zoom was initially designed for basically just business conferences, not for music. I mean, the company got overwhelmed, and there these different formats that exist, but there's a latency that's involved. So it's very hard to do things in real time. It's been a challenge, but I have a student on every Saturday morning. He's a high spectrum, he's a high spectrum autistic kid, very talented, and been working with him for about 2 years now. And he's learning songs. We do all the technical stuff, and then we have songs that he learns. He's working on a bunch of Kiss songs. But we've been able to do it somehow. It's interesting. We can't, still with this technology, I'm thrilled. I've kind of learned a little bit more each time, but it's certainly challenging. And I did one high school class the very first week that everything shut down. I did a high school class percussionist, which was kind of fun. I have a lot of friends who are doing this on a more regular basis. That was interesting. I mean, all these kids are in their bedroom and from their respective homes and trying to engage them, and the teachers involved. And so it's every single lesson in class, like, learn something new and figure something out. I just learned how to share music, how to play music from my computer so they can hear it. And what I've been doing is actually I do a sound check, like a few days before. We do a sound check to make sure everything works, so we don't spend too much time distracted by that aspect. But I'm sure you know better than I do as an educator, where every lesson you learn what works, what doesn't. you know, and I belong to a wonderful Facebook group of people like myself who are all dealing with the technology. We have constant dialogue about what works and sharing different things that we've tried and hacks to make it possible for people to interact and socialize and you know, that aspect of the creative thing, the musical thing. So yeah, it's
very cool. And then Bruce Eade. Bruce, do you want to turn on your camera and mic? Do you have any questions for Jon? And Bruce is the president actually of our board.
right.
There he is.
So
There you are.
there we go. Hi, Jon. Thanks a lot for doing this. I'm a big musical theater fan too. I was just curious, when you read the playbooks and playbills and stuff, it seems like the touring shows have a core band and then they hire people locally. How does that, when you're doing like week, and you're coming in quickly, is it easy to find people? They have like a union you go to and you always find people that can just sight read it and just show up at the show and do a quick rehearsal? How does that work?
It's not read. The music is set in advance. There's a contractor for every show that their job is to hire the musicians. So the local contractor works with the main contract for the tour. And from experience, usually they have an idea based on the style of the show. The contractor that's with the actual tour, he'll talk to them and say, look, we're doing this kind of rock show, or doing this classical, you know, Hammerstein show. You know, we need this type of player. Can you get this person, that person? But the main thing is that they're sent the music and recordings in advance, like at least 3 weeks in advance. So they rehearse it. Then you go in, you have one orchestra rehearsal for about 4 hours. Then you do a sound check and you do the show and you just get through it. And I've done a lot of this, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. You know, I mean, sometimes you just have to deal with it. You get to that first rehearsal and it's like, oh, this is going to be a rough week. And it's you know, that you get what you get. And you know, when I did Cinderella, that tour was during the holiday season and it was a very orchestrally based show. So all the orchestral musicians were doing the Nutcracker and all their church services. So we got like the B team of orchestral players, and sometimes it was great, or you'd have great trumpet players, and the string players sounded like fourth graders. It's just the way it is. But the answer to the main part of your question is that they get the music in advance, and hopefully they've done their homework. And you know, and you just do the best you can. Unfortunately, most of the audiences, they appreciate with the professionalism of the show, and most of it sounds good. They don't quite notice. Some of you with more experience might hear it doesn't sound so good, but you know, most of the time the audience doesn't really know, and you just have to smile and get through it. You know. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bruce. And then Dudley Donator, do you want to turn your mic and camera on? Do you have any questions for Jon? Dudley, are you there? Oh, there he is.
I'm not sure how to turn the camera on. I'm on my iPad.
That's okay. You can go ahead and ask Jon a question.
Jon, this has been wonderful. What an education. I mean, we're so used to our small community of singer-songwriters and the type of music that we produce. To be involved in musical theater on this level is wonderful. I mean, to see the differences and the similarities in the music is coming from us and then coming from you. So thanks for that. I feel like I've just gone to school. I have a lot of things I'd really love to ask you, but I know we don't have time right now. But just the aspect of being able to share the music, I mean, that's one of the things that we all as songwriters need to become prepared for, even if it's just for writing our own songs, you know, get a lick down. I know my son and I write songs and we toss ideas back and forth. And one of the basic things that we've had a problem with so far is getting started. So, you know, we used to live together. He's a film editor in Southern California now. So we're not in the same place. So it's not as simple. But once we get this down to the point where I can record something and get it down to him and get his feedback and then put it back together and so on and so forth, I'll be starting on a new road again myself. But thanks for taking the time. I loved listening to all your explanations and your stories. It was a wonderful interview. Thank you.
Thanks, Dudley. Linda Yelnick, did you want to turn on your camera and mic and ask Jon a question? Are you there, Linda? I don't see her popping up. Oh, there she is. Okay, great.
Okay, no camera. I mean, no real me. This is last minute, whatever. But Jon, I am so impressed with all that you've done. I read about you before. You came here to inspire all of us today. And I guess my question is, I manage an artist who has a band for children, and he's performed assemblies for schools and has a little YouTube TV show he does. And he wants to get into musical theater. Do you have, what advice can you give for somebody who wants to start out producing a show with his own original music and just starting out here in California?
Well, of course, I'm not in California, but I do know from friends out there, my daughter who lives in Hollywood, there are theaters out there. I think you just have to try to create opportunities. I mean, you know, I think you just have to put it out there, and you know, it could be find a community center that's willing to, you know, that's willing to put up your show, or do a performance at a public library. I think you just have to take small steps and put it out there wherever you can, and then you know, and get advice from people on a higher level. You know, talk to local playwrights. Seek out people that are doing it on a professional level at some of the community theaters or the regional theaters, and you know, try to seek these people out and talk to them directly and find out the path that they took. But I think you have to really just take a leap of faith and put it out there, and you know, and just try to perform. And I mean, there's no like direct path to like make it. And I think maybe forget about to make it to Broadway. Just get it out there and perform, and try to ultimately with the goal of performing it for people. And then, you know, just take it from there, step by step, is the best thing I could offer. You know.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then it looks like we just have one more person, but it doesn't have a name attached to it. So Marin 2's iPhone. I'm not sure who that is, but if you want to unmute and turn on your camera to ask a question. Oh, looks like it was somebody else's. Oh, there we go. It looks like we need, I'm not sure what's going on there. Are you there, Marin? Or who is that there? Not getting any audio from you. All right. Well, maybe you can type in your question. We're not hearing you. Yeah. Okay, you'll have to email a question. I can forward it to Jon. So I'm just going to close it out there. We're almost at our hour, and I'm going to hand over Mike to officially close it out. But I just want to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you so much for your time today, Jon. And Mike, go ahead and close it out.
Thank you so much, Poppy, again. And Jon, it was a true pleasure having you today. Thank you so much for your insight and your professionalism that you brought to the table here at West Coast Songwriters. We're looking forward to seeing a lot more of you. So please feel welcome anytime. And thank you, everyone, for joining in today to the West Coast Songwriters Video Vault. I just wanted to say, if anyone has any ideas for upcoming shows on the Video Vault, please do send comments our way, and we will see you very, very soon at the next one, everyone. Take care and have a beautiful day. Jon, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Poppy.